Okay, so recently I've been getting DMs with different types of questions from like my experience in law school to more like just general advice. So I figured I would pop on here and answer a few of those with y'all. So the first question is, how big is the 1L class? So my class is about 420 of us, but that's not the norm. UT usually likes to stick around 300 for the 1L class, but because of the pandemic, there was some issues meeting that number. A lot of people from the 2020 cycle had deferred because they wanted to not go to law school in a pandemic. So after they sent out the admissions decisions, people had deferred, and then come 2021 cycle, not only were they admitting people, but the people that had decided to defer were now deciding to go to law school. Even though we were still in the pandemic, things had started looking up, so more people decided to go. And because UT is a state school, they actually have to have a certain percentage of in-state students. So I'm guessing that when students that had previously deferred were coming in, that skewed with their percentage, so they had to admit more people who were in-state students off the wait list. That's kind of speculation, but I think that kind of jives with the way UT as a state school has to function anyway. So even though that's kind of just like the speculation of like my class, I think it's a pretty safe assumption that that's kind of what happened, kind of went down. So that's how we ended up with a much larger class than was expected. But I think since a lot of people who had deferred decided to come this year, I don't think that's going to happen again, or not to the same like magnitude next year. Another pandemic pending, but I think it's a safe assumption that even though my class is bigger than usual, we're the exception, not the rule. If I don't like reading, should I not go to law school? I remember when I was starting to decide that I wanted to go to law school, I feel like a lot of lawyers were telling me, oh, don't go to law school, it's a mistake, don't do it, you'll be miserable. And that's not something that I want to put out there to prospective students. I don't want to say law school is a terrible decision, you shouldn't go, even if it's in the sense of it's a lot of reading. Like, law school is a lot of reading, unfortunately, but I never want to be the person that says you shouldn't go to law school. What I will say is that law school is a lot of reading, especially certain classes. So I feel like this semester has been a lot more reading heavy than my fall semester, mainly because classes like Civ Pro and Constitutional Law, they're just a lot of reading classes, because Civ Pro is just a lot of rules. You got to read a lot of the rules, and Con Law, at least the way my professor teaches it, it's a lot of history. So not only am I learning the law, but I'm also learning like the historical impact of that law and how those two intertwine. So this semester I think I'm reading maybe almost double what I was reading last semester, and I'm really feeling it. I'm really feeling reading fatigued. I'm the type of person who used to be able to read for fun, for relaxation, and I haven't really been able to do that this semester because I don't want to read. Once I'm finished reading for classes, I really just don't want to make my eyes do that anymore. I don't want my brain to do that. All that being said, is law school is heavy reading focused, especially 1L. And while I won't say that disliking reading means that you shouldn't go, I will say that I am someone who does like to read, we're working on it. I'm someone who didn't mind reading, and I'm getting tired of it. So do you dislike reading so much that you wouldn't do the work? If you're the type of person who can make yourself do the work even though you don't want to, I think you'll be fine. But if you can't discipline yourself to do something you don't want to do, like read, I think you might struggle. And so I'm not going to say whether you should or shouldn't go to law school. That's always your decision to make. But I do want to give you that knowledge that yes, 1L is super reading heavy. Super reading heavy. Even our writing class is super reading heavy. Like when we're doing research for our memos or for our briefs, we have to read the cases, and so you can't get away from it in 1L. You're gonna have to read, and if you don't discipline yourself to read, you're gonna struggle for sure. Any advice for a freshman or a sophomore in college who wants to go to UT Law School? So I would say the two like big pieces of advice for freshmen and sophomores in college who are focused on going to UT, I would say to stay on top of your grades, because that's always just a big one. You're at a point in your college career where you have a lot of opportunity to work on your grades, so I would just start stacking those grades as well as you can. And I'd also say this is a good time to start packing your resume full of like cool and interesting things. So this is my opinion, but I think it stands pretty true, especially for UT, that things that you put on your resume don't necessarily have to be law related. They just have to be things that you're interested in and things that you're passionate about. UT loves having a diverse student body with people who have different types of experiences, and they don't really want the cookie cutter type of law student. Again, this is technically my opinion, but just looking at the type of people that I go to school with and who are in my classes, you know, we're not all the same. You know, there are some people who did the usual pre-law track, you know, they did the poli-sci major, pre-law, had an internship at a law firm or with a judge, and then they went to law school right after undergrad. And that's great, you know, but that's not the path for everybody. And I feel like more likely than not, I have people in my class who did not go that traditional path. Even if that means they're like me and they took a year off to work, we all have something that makes us distinct. And I think that's the goal of UT. They don't want to pack a class full of the same people. They want people to bring new ideas and experiences and diversity to the classroom in order to enhance our education. They don't want this hive mind think that we all have the same background and we all did the same extracurriculars. That honestly doesn't sound very fun anyways. So I think UT is focused on building a diverse class. So having a resume full of like interesting things that you're passionate about shows them that not only are you at their level academically, but also that you can bring something and contribute to the law school aside from just being a number in the 1L class. So I would say, you know, get involved in organizations, volunteer, do service projects, be a research assistant, anything that develops you further into a better version of yourself. Basically, do things that will develop you into a better version of yourself, because that's the kind of things that UT wants to see. And I can't say that this is true necessarily for every other law school, but if you're the type of person who knows that you want to go to UT, then this is probably the best piece of advice I can give you. Any advice for people taking the LSAT or currently applying who want to go to UT? I am firmly in the camp that stats are not everything. We use stats like LSAT score and GPA because those are the only quantifiable measurements that we have for law school admissions, but I feel like too often softs get pushed to the side and they're not emphasized enough. I want to kind of change that narrative because I do think softs matter. And so my biggest piece of advice for people who are taking the LSAT and are planning to apply or are currently applying is do not neglect those softs. And by softs, I mean personal statements, diversity statements, letters of recommendation, any addendums or any additional essays, why statements, any like optional questions that you can submit. All of those, if you have the opportunities to submit them, I say submit them, because what this does is the law school sees your LSAT score and they see your GPA, and those are just numbers. They tell the admissions committee about 20% of what they need to know, that you can take a test and you did well in school. But what they don't know is who you are. So they can see your resume and they see the things that you've been involved with. They see the organizations and the clubs and the service that you've done, and that fills up another maybe 20%. But the rest is going to come from your personal statement, your diversity statement, what your recommenders have to say about you, and then any other additional material you submit. So I cannot stress enough how important those are. You know, take the time to get good recommenders. Take the time to reach out to them. Make sure that these are the type of people that are going to put you in the best light possible. So I reached out to about 4 different recommenders and I had them all fill out the form, and then as I was applying I would just click how many I wanted to send. So sometimes I would just send all 4 because the school let me send 4. If they only let me send 2, then I had my top 2. So I had my faculty advisor at undergrad, and then I had my mentor slash judge that I did an internship with. And those were the 2 that I submitted no matter what. I also worked really hard on my personal statement. I had initially been planning to send out my applications by Halloween. However, writing that personal statement took so much longer than I could have ever anticipated. I didn't end up sending my applications till Christmas. And that was mainly because I was working on my personal statement. Everything else was basically ready to go. It was just the fact that I had so much trouble writing the personal statement. I'm not a very introspective person. I felt like I kept hitting roadblocks trying to develop this narrative of who I am and why I want to go to law school. I wanted to make sure I sent the best work product possible, even if that meant that I didn't send my applications when I wanted to. And I think ultimately that was the right decision to make, because I do not think UT would have accepted me if I had sent my first or second or third draft of my personal statement. I think my softs really carried me through this admission cycle. And you know, I won't ever know that for sure. It's not like you get feedback upon admission where they say, this is what we liked and this is what we didn't like. Although that would definitely be nice, that's obviously not the way it works. So I won't ever know for sure, but as I have mentioned previously in a few videos, my LSAT score was not stellar. It was in the low 160s. My GPA was above the median, but I don't think that alone would necessarily push me into an admit pile. I think really it came down to my personal statement, my involvement in undergrad, the word of my recommenders. So I'm glad I made the decision to put as much effort into building my softs as I did for studying for the LSAT, even though it sucked hard. I remember saying while writing my personal statement that I'd rather be studying for the LSAT again, which was true. I did want to be studying for the LSAT more than I wanted to be writing that personal statement, but I think ultimately that was my best decision. Do you regret choosing UT? Would you pick a T14? Being perfectly transparent with everybody, I did apply to some T14s. However, I was not accepted to any T14s, so I can't really say I would have rathered pick a T14 because I wasn't admitted to any. I was definitely interested in a few, mainly like Vanderbilt and Berkeley. Those are probably the only 2 out-of-state schools that I would have really considered that were kind of not super out of my league. I did submit applications anyways. I shot my shot with them. Unfortunately, they did not admit me, but knowing what I know now, I probably wouldn't make a different decision. I think UT was the best decision for me personally. It's a state school. I get a tuition waiver with my dad's veteran benefits. My family is in San Antonio, so I get to see them more often than I would if I went out of state, and my significant other is also in Austin, so I'm happy with the choice I made now knowing all that I know. But I also try not to be the type of person that dwells on regrets. Like, I try not to think about, you know, what I might have missed out on had I not gone to Vanderbilt or had I not gone to Berkeley. I'm happy here at UT. I'm happy with the friends that I've made and the opportunities that I've had and the choices that I made to get here. I try not to think about the what ifs or what I would be doing if I had gone to another maybe higher ranked school. That's just not the type of life that I want to live. I want to live a happy and joy-filled life, and I can't do that while also ruminating on the fact that I didn't get into these like top 14 law schools. And just because UT isn't a top 14 law school does not mean it is not a great school to go to. You know, we're one of the best in the country, we're the best in the state. I think that says a lot, and I think just in general this was the right choice for me. And that might not be a true statement for someone else. That might not be a true statement for someone else in my class, but that is the truth for me. And I don't want to be the type of person who has regrets at the end of this. I want to live a happy and fulfilled life. Okay, so that's all the questions I had for y'all. If anyone has any more questions, feel free to leave them below in the comments. I'll respond back to my answers, and I might include them in another Q&A kind of bit like this if y'all like it. So let me know.